In this session, I'm thinking to implement transient health bars. So if I were to attack this guy, I move toward him slightly and I do an attack animation. I would like to show over this entity's head, this entity's remaining health after I attack him. So that will be some kind of health bar rendered in the tile right above this enemy, but it will be rooted to this tile. It will track this tile. Done some really simple programmer art, if I can even call it that. This is what the health bar is going to look like. This would be drawn above the entity, and the black would be the border, or I guess any missing space here. And this kind of very pale green would be the remaining health, and it will tick down from right to left. So I'm thinking the outline in Sprite is just going to be a black box. It's going to be a one tile with black box, and then we'll use SDL to draw in the remaining amount of health here. I'm thinking of making the health bar a new entity. It's a very transient entity with the health bar border sprite associated with it and a very short lifetime. And it doesn't have health itself. It's not controlled by AI. It's not pathfinding. It's not doing any of this sort of stuff. So we have this has property on our entities, and I think I'm going to have to actually take that more seriously now in logic and add checks for has position, has animation timer, this sort of stuff. So we have entity type here. We have unknown player, array, and health bar. And I'll need to initialize the entity type down here. Initialize health bar. I think we're just going to have the entity view. If we come and look at the components here, all of our components have a state. They have a position, facing, health, an action timer, and an animation timer. And I have it in mind to consolidate the action timer and the animation timer. So I think I will just use the animation timer for the health bar. I need to go up and check state though, and see if I need to extend state. Unknown, idle, attacking. So this health bar is not going to follow really any of these. We need the type. The entity view type is going to be, or it's actually, we call it ID. Entity view ID is going to be a health bar, and the animation timer, we will have something on the animation timer here. We'll just set it to the attack cooldown. This is left seconds, and has is true. That's the important part for us there. So we're not actually going to be initializing any health bars, but we will fail compilation. So let's fix that for now. So here we're looking at render, and indeed we do need to support rendering for health bar. So case in the health bar, we will assert false just to remind ourselves to actually implement this. This is update states, case health bar, and we'll assert false again just to remind ourselves to implement that. Then in 3.14, we also have the get entity tile index. Here we already know what we need to return. Big Atlas index health bar. So we actually need to go define that now. Big Atlas index health bar, you are going to be a U64, and your value is going to be 32. We have another situation where we have an incomplete switch here. Get animation tile index. So we should never be getting an animation tile index for health bar. So we'll just assert false there. So next, let's go into update states here. When an entity attacks another entity, this is when we want to create the new health bar entity, set up its properties and whatnot. I guess the health bar entity is also going to have a position. So we will take a position here because we need to associate the health bar with some tile. The player connects with an enemy, then we reduce the enemy's health by 1. For now, we'll kind of wiggle this feature in here. It would probably be nice to have some kind of support procedure to add a new entity, create entity. So we'll return OK, like a bool, and we'll also return an entity view. If the bool is false, then the entity view is default initialized, meaning all these pointers are null, and the Boolean OK, not OK value will guide our usage. So maybe I should say add entity. We'll call it add entity. All we need to take in is a pointer to the entity's view. So we will also take in components. So the index of the entity we're about to create is entities count. We bump entities count by 1, and then we will make an entity view. So let's use that now, add entity. We come back here into game.jai, entity, add entity. This appears to have worked. 0 to num enemies. We do not make an entity view. We say OK, and EV is entity add entity, and then we just initialize the enemy here, and that should be OK. So there's 1, there's 2, there's 3. OK. Oh, 4. Wait, what? Jai ranges are inclusive, right? So num enemies -1. So for the player, make sure that we were able to add the health bar, and then we need to initialize the health bar. Position is going to be the nested EV position prop, or the facing tile. It doesn't quite matter. So nested EV is the entity view. That's fine, I guess. The position is going to be this guy, and then we modulate that. Position.y is going to be a -=1. Now here, we're going to fail, I think, when I run the game next, because we are going to call update timer on an action timer prop. And see here, we never check the has property. We just assume that it has a timer. So we don't have to actually check it here. We should in fact check it right here. We should say if EV action timer has, then we need to come down here and make some determinations about the life of this entity here. Now, this is going to be interesting because if we run out of time on the timer, we're going to delete ourselves. So this again is render entity with facing direction. I'm going to need to probably consolidate some of this stuff because I'm going to do very similar logic for a health bar which does not have the facing direction. I'm just basically pasting a tile somewhere. Okay, I'll just duplicate this and then clean it up later. So we're just going to call this render tile. We just delete this guy here because we are not attacking. So in fact, I might actually be able to just call render or entity with facing direction. So let's go call render tile somewhere, render tile, and we just pass the same thing here. So let's build this again and run it, and then I'll press Z. And so we are now displaying this, but it's not disappearing because we have not implemented the update state logic for the health bar. And I just stacked it. That's really interesting. If I keep attacking, I keep creating entities, but it's curious why I stacked it. Oh, the entity, because it has a position, this has become collision. This is so funny. Because these entities are super transient, these bugs are going to magically disappear when I despawn the entity. However, these reveal some latent defects that I should also clean up. We don't actually free anything on the heap or anything like that. All the memory is still going to be owned by us, so I think it's fine to despawn ourselves. We're just going to do a logical decrement that is going to affect the collection size of the entities up here. Delete non-player entity. Build and run this again. I'll press Z. Boom. And just like that. So I can move here. There's no collision. That was really interesting. I just pressed Z here, but the health bar spawned above the guy above me. So I'll attack him. The health bar spawns above him. When I defeat an enemy, the health bar switches locations. Now I think it's doing that because we are not taking our facing direction, but we're taking the entity position. So if we come down here when the player attacks, we take position to be the nested entity view's position, but the nested entity view is now looking at a new entity's position because we called delete non-player entity. So we actually need to take facing tile here. So now we actually want to render the health, the remaining health, or some percentage of it inside of the health bar. Now render tile, we are going to need to do something special, right? We need to look at the entity view ID and we need to figure out if it's a health bar or not. It's a very simple check, but if it is a health bar, then we need to add some extra logic to render yet another thing on the screen, which is a green bar, the length of which is proportional to the ratio of the remaining health that the entity has. One issue we have though, right, is if we come down here to our components, well, the entities have health, and health is just an S16 here. And if we come down to the components, right, when we add health, we don't actually track the maximum health. The health is a struct where we have maximum. It's going to be S16, right? S16, and remaining is in S16. Health now has a health property. So the property is going to be max is 100 and remaining is 100. This is where we actually use health. Damage and entity maybe delete. So health prop remaining minus equal 1. Health prop remaining less than or equal to 0. Render tile here. Okay. And we need to render a rectangle just using SDL, because we need to create a texture. That's what needs to happen. Maybe I actually do want to add something to the atlas here. If we do this without a tile, I think we need to go from surface to texture and then texture to renderer. And obviously we'd want to cache that. Just Gemini this. Set render fill. Oh, okay, wait. That's actually, might be cheaper than I thought. So we'll have a max width here. Color, we do need color. It's going to be 14 pixels. Color is going to be, that's going to be the set render draw color here. And for that, we need to convert to 8-bit 02255. RGBA, just going to be some uninitialized U8s, and then we'll initialize them here. We'll say SDL3, SDL get render draw color. So it takes a renderer and then a pointer to R, a pointer to G, a pointer to B, and a pointer to A that we will now call SDL set render draw color. So 238, 255, 204. Sure. Okay, so that builds, but we need to actually do the width and the height calculation now. Well, the height is always going to be 2 pixels. We know that for sure. Height is always going to be 2 pixels. So width, actually, wait, I'm going to set this to 16 right now, or I guess 14, just to see if we render this correctly at all. 0, so I'll attack. That's not drawing what I wanted it to draw. Why is that the case? No, what am I talking about? I have the example right here. I'm not even following it. My brain is stuck in the old tile rendering. Okay, this is health. This is going to be the rectangle that we construct, and then we just need to render that rectangle at a specific place on the screen. Get rid of all this. Render texture. We're not going to be calling render texture. We're going to be calling render fill rect. That's what it is. I'll blow that up again. I do not see what I expect here. Still black. So what is going on here? Let's see what we have here. 461 health. So health is going to be, okay, X is 1. I'm just getting all tripped up in my coordinates here. For source X, we need to go to the render destination. So now we're drawing a full health bar. Now we just need to modulate the width based on the ratio of remaining health. The width here is just going to be max pixel width times the entity value, or the entity view health prop remaining divided by maximum health, still 0, and then it's all of a sudden full. Oh, the entity view is for a health bar. The health bar itself should not have health associated with it, but indeed I'm falling for one of the latent defects in the engine currently, which is that it does. I will need access to the ratio of health here. That's going to be really interesting. Yeah, now I might be designing myself into a corner where it makes a lot more sense to back this out of the ECS and just reactively render some UI element like a health bar in response to rendering an entity that is getting attacked. Okay, this is a mega kludge here, but because health bar is in the ECS and it does have a health property, we can actually propagate that ratio information by setting the health on the health bar. Here are the components we have available to us. We've got a state, we've got a position facing health, and the action timer and animation timer. Kind of health seems the most natural, but that is a bastardization of the ECS. I guess to prove that it renders, right, we'll just bastardize it first, and then I'll rework this design, but I'll need to do some more thinking about what the actual design is to pick the right approach. And here, we will pass in the other entity's health. Then we come down here, we will take a health, and we will say EV health is prop is health, and has is true. Let's see, so this should be a half bar. So there's half, and now it's full again. The full thing happens because if we defeat the entity, we delete the nested entity, and this nested entity view guy right here still remains valid, but it points to details to a new entity. So yeah, this is getting hairy, but to finish this out in the bastardized way, we just save it off here. Health is the nested EV health prop. And then we just pass it. I think we pass it in here. So now it's half, now it's 0. Cool. And then we can just march these guys along. Half, 0, half, 0. But this yeah, is really nasty here. So that's pretty much the smoking gun that the implementation that I chose is not the right way to go. Okay, so now they should be attacking me, and I have a lot of health. I have 100 health, so I guess if I move around a lot, we'll see it slowly decrease over time, and indeed it does. So thanks so much for tuning in. Thanks also for the advice that you guys gave me. I really appreciate that. Have a good rest of the day. I hope to see you next time. Peace.